Well, Pentiment is a detective mystery where you've got to solve a series of murders against the backdrop of the 16th century Bavaria. This isn't your stereotypical video game, but the team at Obsidian clearly have a passion for the subject matter. That leads us to this entertaining late entry in what could be one of 2022's best games of the year. Pentiment's narrative is definitely a strong point, with murder and not knowing who to trust at its core. The game has a feeling of going through an old-style textbook and reading up on the subject matter directly. The game swerves between faith and truth, but also tells the story of farmers, priests, scandal, and murder. We play as Andreas Mahler, an artist who's been hired by the church to illustrate manuscripts in the town of Tassing. Printing presses are becoming very popular, and the church is trying to gain control of publishing to control the messages that come out. Once they had a really tight grip on the distribution of books, but given the rise of publishing, that is no longer the case. This is a problem for the church because many of the population are starting to question their beliefs, and taxes and churches are squeezing the public for more and more money, and the tension amongst the population is rising. The cherry on the icing on the cake is a visiting nobleman who manages to get himself murdered. So while his friend has been accused of the crime, it's down to Andreas to find the actual murderer. Given it's set in the 16th century, there's no fancy gadgets to use, no modern analysing techniques. You've got to use your street smarts and talk to people to find out what went down. Well, Andreas has a sketchbook which he uses to sketch up leads, plus he can draw maps and character profiles. All of this is good, but the best way to solve the case is to talk to residents and gather clues and piece them together one by one. Well, there's a decent amount of choice in Pentiment. For example, you get to define where Andreas came from, where he studied, and both of those have an effect on the outcome of conversations. Different dialogue boxes pop up depending on which options you choose for Andreas' backstory, and if you decide Andreas has a background in occult magic, then you might be able to decipher symbols, or if you have a background in religious studies, then it becomes easier to fend off the minions of the church. So background choices also help when it comes to interrogating other characters in the game, as they can lead to favours or different evidence gathering techniques. Now, if you sound off about how much you don't like the church, then the peasants who agree with you will find you and give you the latest gossip. Well, in terms of gameplay, you have to go around talking to people and gathering clues. This talking takes up valuable time, and your day is sectioned up into chunks. And the core of the gameplay is all about relationships, earning the trust of who you want to pry clues from, and developing those friendships. Pentiment is a detective game first, but it's also about the relationships with the townsfolk of Tassing. Mechanics from other detective games certainly exist in the world of Pentiment. Ciphers to figure out, secrets to find, and notes to uncover. And what is different about this game is the world around the main detective mechanics is so rich and vast with such attention to detail. So I shouldn't be too surprised with games like The Outer Worlds and Fallout New Vegas under the same roof from Obsidian. Pentiment is on a smaller scale, but it's equally as rich in the writing. The objective of this game is to pin the murder on someone, and there's plenty of options here. Who and where you eventually blame for the murder does have an impact on this small community, but it's verging on spoiler territory to go into any more detail. Given the game is rich in detail and characters, it'll probably take you more than one playthrough to get the required detail from Pentiment. A single playthrough takes roughly 12 hours, but you're going to be wanting to go back again, and given this vast array of choices, and also you've got the skills of the writing team as well. This is a world that you're going to want to spend time in and get to know the characters. The art style is fantastic too, and it's classic medieval artwork with its own distinctive style. There aren't too many other games out there with this amount of character, and props to Obsidian and Microsoft for putting this game out. This game feels like a product of Xbox Game Pass and Microsoft Game Studios. I don't really know if this would exist without the service. It's great to see big studios have the breather room to create interesting little projects like this, rather than knock out the 19th version of Call of Duty in 15 years. The artwork in the game also reflects the characters. Depending on the levels of their education, their background, their artwork changes. So when you're talking, if they're getting angry, the ink starts to bubble and get messy, and if the characters are old, then their artwork will fade at the edges. It's the little touches like that that make Pentiment very, very special. Pentiment is a must-try game. It's interesting, it's got great characters with real depth, and shows off a version of 16th century Bavaria you probably haven't seen before. If you like your detective adventures, then this one probably is for you, but I would recommend Pentiment to anyone with a gap in their backlog of games. It's also available on Xbox Game Pass, so I reckon this one is a must-try. Well, the game was developed by Obsidian Entertainment and was published by Microsoft Game Studios. It's available for the Xbox and PC, and was originally released in November 2022. Well, that is it for my review of Pentiment. Really fun game, and really nice to see Obsidian put out a unique little title. There's so much depth to these characters and the artwork is fantastic. I reckon it could sneak onto some's best games of the year in 2022. And as always, thank you so much for watching or listening. Hit that subscribe button down below and subscribe to This Week in Video Games. Or you can check me out on Twitter at TWIVG Podcast. If you enjoyed this video, found it useful, liking and sharing the video would really help me out. Otherwise, check out the videos on the channel. Well, thanks again. I'll see you soon.